I ran away with my wife's hairdresser. I tossed yet another t-shirt into the suitcase. Glancing at the mysterious man beside me, the thrill of our escape lighting up my heart. But we were both buzzing with excitement, ready to leave everything behind. Even our phones, starting in a fresh place where no one knew our names. But how did I end up here, on the edge of running away from everything I've ever known, hand in hand with a person who made my heart race? Let's rewind 2 to 3 months back. Back then, I was just a regular college student, or as regular as one can be when your dad runs multiple companies and your mom commands a dentist empire. To be more transparent, we are rich, filthy rich. But my parents were also from India, where they think the best way to raise a family is through traditional ways. Can you imagine the look on my parents' faces when I told them I wanted to be an investigative journalist? Priceless. They couldn't have been more horrified. So, you're going to run around after criminals and beg them for stories? My dad asked, his tone dripping with disappointment. Father, you're limiting my options, I shot back, my heart racing with a stubborn excitement. Mom tried the calm approach. We could send you to the best medical or business schools. It's not like you're out of options. Most people we know choose their kids' futures for them. She smiled, thinking that was generous. But I was on fire. I wanted to report on what people see, cut through the noise, and make them stop and listen. Eventually, I got my way, but at a cost. My days were packed with classes, and just as I was settling into my dorm, my phone buzzed. It was my dad. "Remember our deal, Rahul," he said. "I'm paying for the best journalism school, but your dorm is just for breaks. You should be home with your wife." Right. My wife, Aisha, my dad's business partner's daughter, and my longtime gift from the family. Problem was, she wasn't my type. By that, I mean she's female. Coming out as gay? Not an option. The fallout would be brutal. Cut ties, cut funds, and lose everything. So I reluctantly agreed to their conditions. Marriage to Aisha. "Geez, Dad," I said. "I was just picking up my books. I'm on my way home." "Good. Have a good night." The call ended and I sighed. He didn't catch me this time. When I got home, Aisha greeted me from the corner, her face covered in a rejuvenating mask. "You know, you could just let me know if you're staying out late." "Good evening to you, Aisha," I replied. She shrugged. "My dad stopped by earlier and noticed you weren't here. All I said was that you were at your dorm." "Geez, Aisha," I snapped. "You really threw me under the bus." "All right, husband," she said playfully. "I'll make it up to you. Tomorrow, before my spa day, we're going to my hairdresser. Do you need a new look?" She glanced at her watch. "Lovely chat. See you at 10. She danced off, leaving me to trudge in my own room. How is she okay with all this? Or is she just as trapped as I am? Maybe she's playing her part for appearances and all the perks. The last few months have been depressing. My parents control my every move. I have no friends to confide in. And my wife barely looks at me. But hey, at least I'm getting a decent haircut out of it. Tomorrow morning." It took about an hour to reach the small town by the beach. The whole way, Aisha was going on about how her hairdresser worked solo and was booked out for a month in advance. So this reservation was a miracle. When we finally stepped into the salon, bright red walls, framed posters of vintage hairstyles, and a few plants that looked like they belonged in a jungle. It was quirky but cozy somehow. Then I saw him, a tall, tattooed guy with a red ponytail that looked like it could start its own trend, and green eyes that seemed to take everything in all at once. He strode over with a confidence that filled the room. "Aisha," he said, grinning as he hugged her. She motioned towards me. "Jack, meet my husband Rahul." Jack extended his arms, smiling warmly as I shook it. For a second, I was caught off guard by the genuine enthusiasm in his handshake. Not just polite interest, but like he was actually glad to meet me. "So, I'll leave you boys to it," Aisha said, turning to Jack. "Go easy on him, okay? He's new to this whole style thing." Jack chuckled, guiding me to the chair. "No worries. I'll take good care of him," he assured her, waving as she ducked out of the salon. "All right, Rahul? Just you and me now." I settled into the chair, feeling more curious than usual. Jack ran his hands through my hair thoroughly. All right, we've got some options here. But before we get started, got any ideas? Or do you trust me to work my magic? I shrugged, meeting his eyes in the mirror. Honestly, I've never really thought that much about my hair. Just keep it tame, I guess. Tame, he says. Jack smirked, a teasing glint in his eyes. Okay, so we're talking like responsible adult tame, or I'm stuck in a stuffy family alliance and need a break kind of tame. I laughed, more surprised than anything. Second one. Definitely the second one. Good answer, he said, spitting to face me as he studied my hair again. You seem like someone who could rock a little edge. Trust me on this? I shrugged, realizing I actually did. All right, show me what you've got. He got to work, fingers weaving confidently through my hair. So, what do you do, Rahul? What has life got you so tied up in? Oh, mostly family obligations and this. A journalism degree. I winced a bit, saying it out loud, feeling the familiar weight of expectations settle in. Jack nodded, not missing a beat. A journalist, huh? I like that. You must have a good eye for detail then. I bet you see more than you let on. He paused for a moment, eyeing the length of hair with a playful grin. Well, if you ever need a little old hairdresser for an interview, I volunteer as tribute. I couldn't help but smile, impressed by the enthusiasm and the Hunger Games reference. Actually, I said, testing the waters, I've been thinking about this project. It's all still in the works, but I wanted to get a center around hairdressers. You know, exploring what it's like to be on the listening end of things all day. Hearing so many stories, people sharing gossip, venting, but no one ever asks how you're doing. Jack's hands paused briefly as he considered my words. Then he reassured me, a thoughtful look across his face. That's actually a really cool idea. You wouldn't believe half the stories we hear in here, he chuckled. But yeah, you're right. It's a bit of a one-way street sometimes. I nodded, feeling the idea take root a bit more. And not just the gossip part. More like how hairdressers connect with people, you know? Seems like half therapy and half styling sometimes. All right, Rahul, Jack said with a grin. I'm game, but fair warning, I'm packed during the day. How about we meet after 7, until you finished your story? Starting next week? The room seemed to lighten up, and I could feel a spark of excitement settle in. In truth, I did have this journalism project looming, one I've struggled to launch, but watching Jack's smile fill the room, I knew this was it. He was it. I was just a little too lonely, and Jack was that breath of fresh air I hadn't realized I needed. And the best part, staying later when I could avoid going back home to Aisha, where our evening conversations revolved around which handbag collection was rarer, or who wore the most exclusive gala. Here, I had no reason to linger, to connect with someone who genuinely made me feel appreciated. I rocked my new and improved haircut, even catching the eyes of some passing pedestrians. Some changes do boost your confidence. 2 days later, the entire day, my focus was on one thing alone. 7 p.m., when I could finally dive back out to Jackson's salon. Jack greeted me with the same welcoming smile, one that seemed to melt away the stress of all the day. I settled into the car, ready to drive into my project. I began with the usual questions, starting light. How did you get into hairdressing? His ambitions? What he loved about the job? Jack answered honestly, talking about the freedom he felt working for himself and the people he met every day, how each one had a story he learned something from. But then, mid-sentence, he paused, studying me with an intensity that made me feel self-conscious. Are you okay? He asked, his voice soft. Thrown off, I hesitated. Why do you ask? Jack leaned back, crossing his arms. I'm a pretty good reader of people, especially when it comes to spotting sad eyes. Even on a good-looking guy like you, he said, with a smirk. And trust me, a man this handsome shouldn't carry that kind of sadness. Caught off guard, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I had been holding. It's complicated, I said, trying to find the words for what I couldn't fully explain. People think that if you're rich, you should just buy your way out of your problems, like money's some kind of cure-all. Jack scooted his chair closer, his eyes steady on mine. Everyone has their battles, Rahul. What matters is how you choose to face them. He gave my shoulder a reassuring squeeze. I hadn't felt this warmth in years. A thought struck me, and I couldn't resist. I bet you've got girls fighting over your attention every day, I said, throwing it out casually, but keeping my tone playful. Jack raised an eyebrow, giving me a smile. Yeah, you could say that. I nodded for the moment. It felt like that was that. A bummer, really. He'd be the exact type of guy I'd love to get close with, even try my luck with, if he didn't have a girlfriend, and if I did not have a wife. But then he glanced at me and added, "Thing is, I'm particular, and what I'm looking for isn't something you can find in a woman." That caught me off guard. I swallowed, working to keep my expression neutral. I jumped right back into my questions, trying to ignore the way my pulse seemed to pick up. Eventually, Jack stretched, looking at the clock. "Hey, do you mind if we wrap it up for today? I'm a little beat, and I want to be sharp for tomorrow." "Of course," I replied. "Tomorrow at 7 p.m. again? It's a date." "See you tomorrow, Rahul." Jack flashed a grin as I left the salon, and all I could do was wish that he actually meant it. Driving back, my mind drifted to what my parents might think if Jack were to magically fit into their perfect mold as a girl. Of course, brightly colored hair, tattoos, flamboyant style? Nope. Maybe if he was some sort of princess with a fancy title, they'd grudgingly consider it. But even then, the judgmental look would still follow. I pulled into the driveway, already bracing myself for the usual vibe of home. When I stepped inside, I found Aisha lounging on the couch, flipping through a book. "Hey," she greeted, looking up. "Where were you?" "Working on a project with your hairdresser," I said, downplaying the excitement I felt. She just nodded, unfazed. "Oh, by the way, your mom called. Apparently our parents are planning to visit tomorrow, but mine got tied up in a meeting, so it'll just be yours." I blinked. "Why is my mom calling you and not me?" She grinned knowingly. She said, "Betty, cook us something nice. We're visiting." Because as she put it, she knows I won't take orders from you. And even if I did, I wouldn't listen. I chuckled despite myself. My mom wasn't wrong, but I knew Aisha would just order takeout and plated like she'd been slaving in the kitchen. With a sigh, I texted Jack to reschedule, frustration bubbling up as our meeting was pushed to the end of the week. For now, my focus shifted on tomorrow's grand event, the perfect family dinner. The next morning, our house bustled with activity as chefs worked like contestants in a cooking show finale. Aisha directed the chaos with ease, tweaking every detail so it looked like her masterpiece. By the time I fixed my collar, Aisha adjusted her earring, and the doorbell rang. My parents had arrived. Aisha greeted them warmly, ushering them inside. We settled all around the table, faced with an impeccably presented feast. Dinner began smoothly, until my mom's eyes lit up with that familiar, inquisitive spark. "So, Rahul," she started, her hands neatly folded, "now that you and Aisha are settled, when can we expect grandchildren?" The piece of naan I'd just bitten into felt like a brick in my throat, and I reached for water in a panic. Aisha, ever composed, smiled and said, "We're definitely working on it." My mom looked satisfied, like her mission was accomplished. Then my dad leaned forward, his expression stern. "Rahul, what about your studies? Are your grades up to standards?" I swallowed hard, their eyes drilling into me. "Yes, Dad. Just a lot of work, but I'm managing." His frown deepened. "Managing isn't enough. We're investing in your education, and we expect excellence. If you're not excelling and not starting a family, we need you to reconsider your priorities." My frustration simmered. "I'll do my best. Journalism is a demanding program." My mom chimed in. "We were discussing it. And maybe it's time you considered something more meaningful. Medicine or business would be far better use of your skills. Journalism is pulling you away from your family and wife." I forced a calm response. "I've invested a lot into this. I just need more time." The silence that followed was deafening. My parents exchanged glances that radiated disappointment. Even Aisha gave me a pointed look, sliding with them in a quiet argument. The rest of the evening was painfully awkward. My mom found every excuse to give Aisha advice on proper dessert presentation, her tone dripping with confidence. My dad barely acknowledged me, his words cut and dismissive. Small talk fell flat, and by the time they felt, the air was thick with their lingering disapproval. I was utterly drained. I just wanted to lounge on my bed and forget the night ever existed when my phone suddenly rang. It was Jack. "Hey, journalist," came his warm voice through the line, smooth like melted caramel. "I was passing through your college and thought, if you're nearby, maybe we could take a short walk before bedtime." I nearly fumbled the phone in excitement. "I'll be ready in 10 minutes, I replied, far too eagerly, and hung up before I could embarrass myself further. My heart raced as I stormed out of the house, forgetting to even let Aisha know I was leaving. Jack was already waiting when I arrived, leaning casually against the lamppost, his outfit effortlessly stylish as always. His freshly dyed red hair glinted in the soft glow of the streetlight, making him look like he stepped out of a fashion ad. "Hey, Jack," I waved, trying to keep my cool, though my grin betrayed me. "Boy, I'm glad to see you." "Hey, Rahul," he replied, his smile soft and undeniably flirtatious. "The pleasure is all mine. I had a couple of errands to run near your college, and I remember you live nearby. Thought I'd take my chances. Hope it's not too weird." "Weird? Not even close," I said, shaking my head. In truth, I really couldn't care if he had called at 3 a.m. I'd been out of the door just the same. As we started to walk, the cool night air eased my nerves. "So, Jack," I began, "do you have any regrets in life?" "Oh, plenty," he said, letting out a quick laugh. "But don't you think you should have some of those for Friday's interview? Gotta keep the mystery alive." I chuckled. "Fair enough. Guess I'll have to wait." Our conversation flowed naturally after, effortlessly, and the light, like we'd been friends for years. By the time we reached my place, Jack stopped and turned to me, his eyes glinting under the dim streetlight. "I can't wait to be interviewed again," he said, his tone carrying an unmistakable warmth. "Yeah, can't wait to see you again." My eyes widened in horror as the words escaped. Jack's smile deepened, soft and amused. I stammered a quick goodbye and practically bolted inside. My cheeks burning, I leaned against the closed door, my heart pounding, and I couldn't help but grin like a complete fool. Friday. Finally the day arrived, and I drove the hour to see Jack. He greeted me with his usual warm smile, handing me a cup of herbal tea. As soon as I walked in, we settled into our routine, and as we started the interview, I tried to focus, but my mind drifted, clouded by the events of the past days. Jack watched me with concern, his gaze yet probing. "So," he began casually, "why the gloomy face?" I managed a weak smile, waving it off. "Oh, it's nothing," I lied, reminding myself to keep a journalist's composure. I wanted to appear unbothered, but Jack didn't seem convinced. He leaned forward, holding my gaze. "You know, I enjoy talking to you, Rahul. You're different. You are not just your money. But there's something solid in your character," he said. "I've seen plenty of flashy types, but you don't come off that way. It's refreshing." I couldn't help but let out a small, grateful laugh. "Well, I suppose. I try not to stand out," I replied. "And thank you. It's nice to hear that." His words encouraged me, and without meaning to, I found myself opening up again. "Jack, I'm in this marriage." I started hesitantly, glancing down. "An arrangement, really, between our families. There's no love there, not from my side anyways." Jack's face softened, and he reached out, placing a comforting hand on my shoulder. "I get it, Rahul. I know what it's like to feel stuck. In something that doesn't feel right." He paused, looking at me. "My mother was the only family I had. She never approved of me. Not by work, not, well, anything about me really. She thought hairdressing was beneath me." "Really?" I asked. He nodded. "We didn't come from much, you know. When things went downhill, I did everything I could to keep her comfortable, even covered surgeries she needed." His voice lowered, but no amount of money could stop the inevitable. I stayed quiet, letting his words settle over us, realizing I wasn't alone in the struggles. And so, we kept talking, trading stories, until the evening stretched into nights. And night into morning, Jack had his share of heartbreak and feelings of not belonging in a certain way. And as I sat there listening to him, I realized just how rare it was to feel truly free. I just realized how rare it was to feel truly understood. Thankfully, I texted Aisha that I would be coming home that night, passing it off as an overnight study lesson. Jack and I spent the entire night in his salon, talking, laughing, occasionally falling into these moments of silence but our eyes just wouldn't let go of each other. As the dawn crept in, he cancelled his first few appointments, making more time for us. At some point, I finally tore myself away from the fantasy of just staying there forever. I looked at Jack, trying to steady my voice. I should probably head home. We stood up at the same time, the space between us electrified, and he reached out, holding my arm. "You're something else, Rahul," he murmured, his face inches from mine. I felt his breath, his lips so close, I could almost feel the warmth, the invitation, and for a second, I nearly leaned in. But the image of Aisha flashed in my mind. Wife, responsibilities, morals. I pulled back, my pulse racing, trying to regain some sense of control. I think I have all I need for the project. Thank you for everything." He looked at me for a second, and then stretched out his hand up like he was surrendering. "I'm sorry, Rahul. I guess I didn't consider your grounds on this. I went for what I wanted." With a final glance, I left, feeling something inside me retch as I drove back home. My mind spun the entire way. Jack had become so much more than just a project subject. He was, if I had the power to disappear and take him with me, I would have done it in a heartbeat. As I pulled into the driveway, something caught my eye. Tire tracks in the dirt that definitely weren't mine. A chill went through me. Can this day get more miserable? I found Aisha in the kitchen, casually scrolling through her phone. "Aisha," I started, keeping my voice even. "Who was here last night?" She glanced up at me, barely raising an eyebrow. "I don't know what you're talking about." I took a step closer, feeling my own nerves tighten. "The car tracks outside, Aisha. Don't play dumb. Whose car was here?" She shrugged, still not looking at me. "You're being paranoid." "Aisha," I pressed, now more sharply. "Enough games. I know someone was here. Who was it?" She sighed and set down her phone. "Fine. You want the truth? It was my professor." I felt my jaw tighten. "Your professor?" Her gaze was steady. "Yes, Rahul. He's more than my professor, okay? And you didn't think to mention this to me. Wife? Or maybe not cheat?" She crossed her arms, giving me a long, defiant stare. "You think I owe you the truth?" She shot back. "We're both here because of our families, not because we want to be. You have no right to question what I do." I laughed bitterly. "Marriage still is marriage. We are bonded together. You're a selfish woman." Aisha shot up from her seat with a stormy expression. "Oh, you're the one to lecture me about selfishness," she spat, her voice thick with sarcasm. "That's rich, Rahul. Really? Really bold of you. Have you ever even bothered to ask me about anything about myself? Like, I don't know, what my favorite color is. What do I actually want? You act like you're the only one miserable here." I stood there, taken aback as she continued. "Let me spell it out for you, in case you missed it. I'm studying medicine because I have to, not because I love it. I'm married to you because I have to. When I told my parents I was madly in love with someone 10 years older, do you know what they did, Rahul? They married me off. That's my reality." She paused, taking a shaky breath, as if holding back more. "He's sick, Rahul. Very sick. I'm paying for his treatment with whatever I can. If my family found out I'm seeing him, they'd cut me off in a heartbeat, and he'd have no hope." Her words stunned me into silence. "You're calling me selfish when I haven't told your parents that you swing the other way? And do not dare to deny that." I was stunned. "What? Ow!" Aisha's eyes widened, but then her expression hardened. "Oh, don't play dumb with me. We all know. I know. Even your parents know. But they're playing this happy, respectable family game. Maybe if you knew the pain of facing the wrath of your family, you'd understand what true suffering is like." I opened my mouth to respond, but she stormed into her room, leaving me reeling. I needed to talk to her, to figure this out, but after a sleepless night, I did not know the right words to say. A knock echoed through the house. It was my father. He wasn't there for small talk, and directly got to the point. "You will not see Jack ever again. He is a disgrace to our family, and so are you," he declared. "What? How do you even know about him?" I stammered. He leaned in closer. "I found out. I bribed him to ensure he wouldn't contact you again. He willingly agreed, claiming that he'd only wanted to lure you into his salon for casual hookups. You should thank me for saving you from that. Tears streamed down my face, a wave of frustration and sorrow crashing over me. Did our love end for even having a chance to begin? Later that day, a text from Jack lit up my phone. Don't worry, I'm figuring out some things. I won't abandon you. My tense muscles eased. Jack truly cared. He hadn't said if he'd taken the money. The uncertainty gnawed at me, but I was done letting situations spiral out of control. For the first time, I wanted to reclaim my life, starting with the problems that weighed on me the most. I found Aisha, and unwavering determination said, I want a divorce. She barely hesitated before replying, I agree, but our parents can't know about this for now. I need time to figure out how to handle them. Her quick compliance caught me off guard. Still, I agree, the divorce would be finalized. And even though she never came clean about her dealings with the professor, I wasn't guilt-free either. We both had wronged each other, and at that moment, I felt closure. 1 month later, Aisha and I barely spoken since that day. Even if we agreed upon a divorce, we just haven't had a normal topic to discuss. I did not hear from Jack, and I respected his decision, though, in my heart, I still had believed that I was just a silly little fling to him and nothing more. But then, one day, my phone rang. It was Jack. My heart raced as I heard his voice on the other end, asking me to meet him near his home. Without thinking, I rushed out, anticipation propelling me forward. When I saw him, we hugged tightly, as if we were two lost souls, finally finding each other again. I'm sorry, Jack, Jack said, his voice laced with regret. Raj visited my salon. He offered me a bribe of $100,000 to stay away from you, but I turned it down. Thank God, I breathed, relief washing over me. You didn't take it? Of course not. I didn't even consider it. Not for a second. I will never allow rich goons to try and control me. For a month, I've been looking for a new place to open my salon. I want a more peaceful place, not so many customers, and more freedom. I wanted to say goodbye properly, but I had to make it clear. I wasn't interested in their money. If you ever wanted to visit, I'll send you the address. I stepped backwards. Wasn't I a casual fling to you? A random hookup? He looked at me. He was shocked at my words. What? Don't be silly. I told your father that I had some feelings towards you and that you were good, and he should not control you in this way. My instincts took over as I stepped closer to Jack, closing the space between us. My eyes traced the detail of him. His hand, his hair, those eyes that seemed to draw me in effortlessly. His presence was magnetic, and I didn't feel I needed to hide my attraction. Are you going to do something? Jack said, his lips curling into teasing. Intrigued smile. Hell yeah, I will, I said, confidence surging through me like electricity. Without hesitation, I grabbed his face, my hand steady on his cheek, and pulled him into a steamy kiss. Jack froze for a brief moment, surprised, but then he leaned into it. His hand gripped my waist, pulling me closer as he kissed me back with a mixture of tenderness and hunger. His lips moved with mine, each kiss growing deeper, more intense. And though we were making up for lost time, we paused, only to catch our breaths, our foreheads resting on each other for a heartbeat, before driving back in. Each kiss more fervent than the last. The words felt like it spun around us, and I couldn't help but lose myself in the way Jack kissed me. Gentle, but as if he didn't want to let go. 4 months later, I was still living in my house, but with the divorce finalized, Jack and I started seeing each other on a regular basis. The 1-hour drive did not present us with any issues. As the days passed, we were falling with each other more and more. I realized that Jack brought out the best version of me. I got more social, wanted to go out, which I previously considered to be a huge task. I did not care about my strict family tradition and how much sacrifice I needed to make. All I cared about was 2 things, my studies and Jack. I think he felt the same way. In 2 months, we never had a big conflict. He would always sit down with me and talk it out. He understood and respected me more than my family ever did. Soon after, an impulsive idea came to mind. Jack, I said, my heart racing, let's go together. In the short time we spent together, I realized that I was meant to be with you, if you want that too. And I know we're moving fast. Jack looked flustered, his cheeks flushed. "I just wanted to ask you the same question. But are you sure you want to do this?" Without hesitation, I grabbed him, pulling him close, and our lips sealed the deal, held naked pact. He bit my lips softly, with a playful smile on his face. Gladly, as we rushed to gather my belongings, I couldn't help but feel the thrill of the moment. Aisha was out, and we had to be fast, all while trying to focus on packing. We kissed numerous times, getting lost in the moment, barely containing ourselves. Finally, I thought, I would be free from this pretend marriage and able to continue my studies away from this suffocating society. "I can't believe I'm doing this," I murmured. The excitement bubbled within me, and I couldn't stop smiling as we drove away. "You can always turn back," Jack said, laying his hand on my knee. "No," I replied firmly, looking into his eyes. "This is something I need." 2 months later, Jack and I settled into a small forest town, conveniently located near the most populous cities. Jack opened his salon and quickly became the best in town. Besides, business was thriving, and I couldn't help but ponder of him. I continued my studies online, finishing my master's degree, and started a blog focused on the mental health awareness in the LGBT community, an often overlooked topic that needed more attention. It wasn't much at first, but I had some earnings trickling in, and it felt fulfilling to use my voice to raise awareness. I've also been applying for jobs as an investigative reporter. Wanted to explore the field of journalism a little more, but it is a slow yet steady process. After living in luxury, I had to adapt to a more humble environment. I did not hold any grudges towards Aisha, as the distance provided that she and her shared the heinous task of letting our parents control our lives. When I was leaving, she did not put up a fight, but she said that she would be telling her parents because we're already tangled in a web of lies. During 3 months, Jack urged me to reach out to my parents, saying I wouldn't know what I had until I lost them. His words hit hard. I wrote to my mother, providing our new address and telling her that she was welcome to visit if she ever wanted to talk. Obviously, this was something that both sides needed to process. That particular day, Jack was out running errands, while I sat at home focused on writing my story. I was lost in my thoughts when I heard a knock at the door. I opened it, and there stood my mother. Before I could say a word, she rushed into my embrace, her arms wrapping around me tightly. "Rahul!" she exclaimed, her voice thick with emotion. "Your father and I read all your stories. We had no idea you were so talented." She stepped back, her eyes searching mine. "Your father and I have been researching everything. We wanted to get more educated on the topic of your life." I invited her for a cup of tea, eager to hear the rest of the story. Her voice trembled slightly as she continued. "We just wanted you to have a respectable job in authority because your father and I sacrificed a lot to build our reputation. You have to understand that I had dreams too, but my parents wouldn't hear of it. I had to give that up to meet their expectations." She paused, her expression shifting. "Things have changed between your father and Aisha's father. They're no longer business partners, and we lost a significant chunk of profit, but it's nothing we can't repair. Aisha's father is angry, blaming our family because Aisha did the same thing you did. She ran away." I took a breath, fearing for what the answer might be. "What about Dad?" Her face softened. "He still needs some time to process everything, but he's not mad anymore. If you ever need financial help, we will provide it. Society can be cruel sometimes, spitting you away from your loved ones." Tears brimmed in my eyes. "Thank you, Mom. It means the world to me that you're trying to understand." She smiled gently, brushing a tear from her cheek. "We're just beginning to understand, but I want you to know that we love you and we're here for you." Mom and I embraced a hug, and she went on her way, promising that she would come back together with Dad for a visit. After Jack came back home, I explained what happened. As Jack settled onto the couch beside me, a warm smile spread across his face. "You did really well today, Rahul. I'm proud of you." I chuckled softly. "Thanks, Jack. I never thought I'd see the day my mom would show up at my door like that." He leaned in closer, with his steady gaze. "You deserve that connection. You deserve to be loved for who you are." I met his eyes, feeling an intensity of moment. "I couldn't have done it without you. You've been my anchor through all of this." Jack reached out, gently tucking a stray hair behind my ear, and I'll always be here, no matter what. I felt a warmth radiate between us as I whispered, I'm so glad I found you. Me too. In this crazy world, you've been the best part of my life. With that, I leaned in, our lips meeting softly, sealing the promise of everything we had ahead of us. The conclusion. Sometimes I find myself wondering what my life would have been like if I hadn't met Jack. Would I have settled into a life of pretense, starting a family with a woman I didn't love, and pursuing a career that held no meaning? Meeting Jack changed everything. He showed me how to live with strength and purpose, and that happiness isn't something wealth can buy. Over time, I even rekindled my relationship with Aisha and her father. Jack became the one constant source of light, weaving us all together and helping us heal in ways I never thought possible. I'm finally a happy man, with a healthy relationship and a supportive community, which some may only dream of having. The end. Do you have a lot of societal expectations in your life? Thank you for watching. Consider subscribing to become a part of the Rainbow Force, and stay wholesome.